Howdy do, guys. My name is Mr. Palacios. I'm going to be walking you through how to get from a function like this, where x is squared, to a function like this, where we multiply x, we subtract h from x, multiply by a, and square that, and then get a k. So we're going, and then add a k to it. We're going to be talking about how this is basically this. This is just a little bit more complicated, okay? This is what your average function sort of looks like, but just know that this is just as a translation of this function right here. So when we talk about translations, all that means is that we're moving points on a coordinate plane from one spot to another. And there's a formula that you can do in order to do that. Well, that's the same thing with functions. You can start with the basics, and as you add elements to it, you're going to be able to put points on your graph, or in the graph, wherever you want, and you're in charge of that. So let's break this down, shall we? So step one is that we need to know that in order to change this, the first thing that we can do is add an a element to the x. Multiply x squared by a, and a could be any number. But if a is greater than 1, what it's going to do is it's going to change this graph. It's going to make it a little bit steeper. It's going to stretch it out, okay? If a is greater than 0 but less than 1, it's going to shrink it. It's going to make it very wide, okay? Another thing you need to know, and this should be a basic, if a is positive, then the graph is going up. If a is negative, then the graph is going down, okay? So that a is going to alter our graph a lot depending on what it is. And just know for this one, this is like half or 3/4 or something like that. That's going to shrink out your graph. Okay, so we've already added an a element to it. So we have our new function right here equals a times x squared. I'm getting ahead of myself. A times x squared. Okay, now if we don't want our coordinates to be, our vertex to be 0, 0, and if we're looking at graphs like this, then it's not 0, 0. That means we need to move our vertex, we need to move our coordinates to another part on the graph, and we've done that already, right? We've done x squared plus 5, and that's going to move our coordinates. And we've practiced moving our vertex along the x-axis and along the y-axis, and that's what we're going to be doing today. But we're really looking at how we can write a function given a graph. And I'm going to give you something like this. Your job is to create the function that would create this graph. All right, so you're going to write the function, and then it should fulfill these requirements. So what do we do? In order to move our function vertically, okay, we are going to add an h to our x. So we're going to multiply a times this x squared. We're going to subtract an h from it, okay? And that's going to move it vertically along our x-axis. Now, as you can see from a graph like this, we're not really moving it anywhere. That would be like when Miles Morales dove off the building and his arc looked like this. Yeah, we would need to move the vertex over however many points it was so that this was the right coordinate. But on this one, it looks like our vertex is really going to be at that y-axis. Another thing that you want to know, I know this just kind of seems very random, but there is a line of symmetry in your parabolas, and it usually is x equals h. That's the line of symmetry. So if you were to divide that graph into two parts, each side would be identical. Identical, okay? And the axis of symmetry is a line right down the middle, and that's when x and h are equal, okay? So when x and h are equal, that's going to cancel it out and create that 0. A times 0 would be 0, which would get us, boom, right back on this axis, okay? Now, another thing that we want to do is we want to move our graph up and down the y-axis. In order to do that, we add a k component to it, okay? So as we keep adding components, what it's going to do is allow us to place our parabola, our function, anywhere that we want on the graph. Okay? Now, in order to find, when we're looking at something like this, you want to start by step 1, find the vertex. Okay, so I'll go ahead and write this down. Find the vertex. Okay, step 1. Now, if we're to look at this, it looks like the vertex is at 0, 30. Okay, so we've identified the vertex, it's at 0, 30. Now, what does this have to do with these new letters? Like, what are you talking about, Mr. P? Well, this, when we find the vertex, this is gonna be our H value, and this is gonna be our K value, okay? So we can really plug these, just plug those in right here. I'm gonna do it right over here because I have a little bit more room. So, X, okay, equals A times X minus, okay, our H, which is 0, squared, plus our K, which is 30. Okay, and that's our function. Great. What's our next step? Step 2, find a coordinate on the graph. Okay, so if I look over here, I have a coordinate designated, it's 114, and I'm gonna plug that right into this problem. So, okay. Oops, sorry. Squared plus 30. Now, I've just plugged in my X value. I also wanna plug in my Y value, which is 14, and that's gonna go right here, right where you think it would. And what we're looking for is, we want to find out what this value is. We want to know what A is so we know how to make the arc of our function. Okay, so now we just got to work this out. 14 equals A times 1 squared, because 1 minus 0 is 1, plus 30. Okay, so that means that 14 equals A times 1 plus 30. I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides. So negative 16 equals A. A times 1 is A. So this is going to be my A value. And I can plug that in right here. Now I know that the function is written like this. Negative 16. Okay. 1 minus 0 is 1, right? So, X minus 0 is just X. So I can just put my X right there, X squared. So I have, my function is negative 16x squared plus 30 is going to give me this parabola. So if I were to give you any other graph, say this is 10, and go like this, and say this is 2, and then this point right here is, let's say, oh gosh, let's just say this is, that point is 2, 5, okay? And then it crosses between 2 and 3. So given that point, and given this arc and these numbers, you should be able to create a function that works using the parameters that I've given you. So I'm gonna give you a couple of these. I might even give you one where there's multiple arcs. And your job is to write the functions for each of these, or at least find out which functions would fit best within these, okay? So that's it for today. I'm sorry we're moving through this so slow, but I mean, that's almost 10 minutes. So here's a picture of my beautiful face. Here's a picture of my beautiful work. Good luck. Good luck, you guys. I think you can do it. I'm looking forward to watching your videos. I'm just trying to get to 10 minutes. Here we go. 5, 4, 3,